Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to World Human Sciences and Management Conference 2021 and 22. This is Rudranarayan Das, Executive Director, Center for ADIVASI Research and Development. We are proud to announce that this conference is conducted along with the Indian Institute of Management Sambalpur, Central University of Odisha, Koraput, and Ravenshaw University, Cuttack. I welcome our speaker for today, Professor Bartlomiej Lodzki, and participants across the globe through Facebook and YouTube Live, and who are here to listen to Professor Lodzki. The broader theme of this conference is agnotological context, disciplinary practices of social sciences and policy trends. On behalf of Center for ADIVASI Research and Development, I extend my profound gratitude to Professor Sanjay Kumar Naik, respected Vice Chancellor, Ravenshaw University, Professor Mahadev Joyswal, Director, Indian Institute of Management, Sambalpur, and Professor Sarath Kumar Palita, Vice Chancellor, Central University of Odisha, Koraput. The convener of this largest virtual conference are eminent Indian historian, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda, and eminent policy activist, writer, and philanthropist, Mr. Charudat Panigrahiji. The main outcome of this conference is to come up with the national and international framework for the education system in future. The crux of this conference is will be the use of digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and virtual reality that is being increasingly adopted after the outbreak of COVID-19. We hope this conference would help students, faculties, researchers, and all to expand their mental horizon and help the education system to adopt the best in future. Ladies and gentlemen, the Center for ADIVASI Research and Development is a leading research-oriented institution promoting ethnographic, empirical, and evidence-based research for engaging and addressing the challenges that 21st century globe is facing today. The prime agenda of this institution is to come up with potential policy solutions for social change while believing in the idea of 3D, debate, dialogue, and discussion, and with expertise, experiencing, and education. The institution focuses on marginalized communities and work for their livelihood to protect the nature, culture, language, and identity in particular. The age of modernity has witnessed that change is the only constant phenomena for societal purpose to enhance knowledge. Our information work for them is methodical and avoid paradoxical framework which is neglected so many centuries from theory to become practice. Our center believes in the concept of social marketing, which is seriously looking for non-profit marketing and builds new social entrepreneurship for check and balance mechanism to glorify generations to come. Center for ADIVASI Research and Development come to serve with the holistic approach of critical thinking in education to fill the gaps and to plan accordingly for the voiceless communities, for the beneficiaries, direct in self-reflecting global societies. Dear friends, in today's evening, we have with us Professor Bartlomiej Lodzki. Professor Lodzki is an assistant professor in the University of Wroclaw Institute of International Studies and former visiting scholar at the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communication, and a political scientist, media analyst. He is the head of the revision commission of Police Communication Association and member of the European Communication Research and Education Association. He is the former head of the Center for Empirical Media Research and Social Studies at the Department of Journalism and Communication in the University of Lower Sicily. His academic and research activities are focused on political communication, climate change, agenda setting, biodata, mass media effect, and new communication technologies. He lectured at the University of Lusofona, at the University of Tartu, and the University of Murcia as a participant of the teaching staff mobility program. He is the co-editor and the author of the book entitled The COVID-19 Pandemic and Challenge for the Media and Communication Studies, published by Wroclaw in 2022. Professor Lodzki will deliver his talk on climate change analysis of the most shared news of global TV stations by the global audience. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Professor Lodzki to initiate his talk. Professor Lodzki, please initiate your talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. introduction. And believe me, it's an honor for me to be with you, with people from your center and with your audience. So let's start. It's a fact that the climate is changing. Negative processes are progressing, and experts point to solutions to reduce the future effects of the year of neglect. The problem is global, but not all media, not all political actors take a similar approach to the climate policy. Example, Trump's administration dramatic and unliteral withdrawal from the 2015 Paris Agreement has diminished the significance of long-term international compromises. And the purpose of my today's speech, my talk, is presenting the meaning of media and to analyze media reports from 2017, 18, and 19 on climate change and the climate policy. My study includes content from 7 global television stations shared from broadcast websites to the social media space. In the analysis, I focus on Facebook as the largest distribution channels of traditional media content. And if it's only possible, I would like to try to share my presentation. Is this visible for you? I'm not sure, is this visible, my presentation? Okay, briefly about the structure of my presentation. So first, I would like to focus on the role and the significance of traditional media and the traditional news media. I will present media studies related to climate change and sustainable development goals. I will next discuss the importance of the concept of shareability. And finally, I will present my research objectives and findings from my current research. So let's talk about the meaning of media. In a report investigating news consumption and media literacy worldwide, television was the primary source for news, primary source of news and current affairs for consumers in every participating countries, and the countries you can see, I hope, on the screen. So exception to this was India, where 82% said that the social media was their main way of focusing on news and keeping in touch. According to the study, social media was cited as the primary news source for over 50% of consumers from each country, as well as online newspapers, news sites, and, for example, news applications. The printed newspapers was the preferred source of news for more than 60% of respondents from India, but it was among at least used news outlets in other countries. The consumption of television is still high. This is because TV offers viewers more precise news, which is generated, of course, by professional journalists or reporters. Consequently, audiences consume more credible and reliable information. News channels strive to report the truth and analyze its accordance with a set of standards. As a part of their commitment to act independently, They will produce content that is ambiguous, transparent, and beneficial to society in general. But we have to know that it's an element of the theory. We cannot say today that we have unbiased media or unbiased television channels. Of course, it doesn't work like that, but formally we have to know that we should receive much better content, high quality content from, for example, television or the newspapers than typical social media profiles. And few words more about the meaning of media and how we can use media to share information about the climate change or SDGs goals. And here we have example of Media Compact. The United Nations launched the Sdg Media Compact in September 2018, an initiative to raise awareness of sustainable development goals. A powerful alliance of over 200 members spanning 160 countries of 5 continents has been created through Sdg Media Compact, which began, word to mark at the beginning, with a group of only 31 founding media and entertainment companies, from 30 to actually more than 200 around the world. And the Media Compact aims to inspire news and entertainment organizations to use their resources, their people, their journalists and the talents to accelerate the achievement of the goals. Through the Media Compact industry leaders and innovators can deepen their commitment to supporting the sustainable development goals. The Media Compact has brought together, again, broadcasters, entertainment companies, print media, news agencies, radio stations, and digital publishers to advocate and act the main goals. The Media Compact members have regular access to experts on a key issue related to SDGs, as well as the access to relevant and timely content to United Nations priorities. The Media Compact, in the Media Compact, the members remain autonomous and are allowed to define for themselves to take action, with a guidance and assistance from the United Nations on thematic and substantive issues as needed. Members of Compact are not required to take any specific action. However, they are encouraged to engage in SDGs by developing content relevant to goals and or scaling up their sustainability practices. And now I think nice example of the corporations in practice, and it will be example directly from Japan. The Asahi Shimbun, it's the biggest newspaper not only in Japan but also around the world, has published many in-depth stories, some with really quality multimedia content on a wide range of SDGs related topics. The team of the newspaper has also interviewed key people, including, for example, Amina Mohammed, the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, who played, of course, a leading role in drafting of SDGs. Additionally, the quality journalism, the Japanese media play also magnificent role in education. So not only cover issue of the climate change and other United Nations priorities, but they play a really important role in education. And now one of example. Since March 2018, the Asahi Shimbun has organized different workshops at juniors and senior high schools, universities, special needs institutions, Japanese language schools, and preparatory classrooms. And In the workshops, participants were led to read various newspapers articles related, of course, to such issues as farming or food loss, while keeping the preventing laws in mind. And later, the people who were a member of the workshop were asked to find articles and capture their attention and write their own
Dr. Zena,
comment.
please mute yourself.
And even students who have never heard about the phrase Sustainable Development Goals thought about the global issue from the perspective of their own every day and every life. And I think it's very important and positive example how media can influence, positive influence, not only on the audience, but also have positive influence in education level. And now the next point of my presentation and information about the growing number of media messages refer to climate change. As you see on the screen, over the full year of 2021, media attention increased 55% compared to the year 2020. As compared to 2020, it was somehow a rebound in attention. There was about 90% increase in coverage over 2019. In each year of 16, 17, and 18, coverage was more than double the amount, and the 2021 coverage was more than 90% higher. Since the Media and Climate Change Observatory began monitoring global level climate change 18 years ago, in 2004, last year accounted for the most coverage climate change of global warming. You can see the same when we see the coverage not only from the newspapers, but here on the slide, news from biggest news televisions around the world. Of course, mostly from United States, Great Britain, but not only. How media cover the issue about the climate change. On the basis of thousands of articles published between 2005 and 2018, 90% of media coverage accurately attribute global warming to human activity. 90%, it's, I think, very important score. And the media outlets reflect their audience and the influence the views. According, as you see on the screen, to Pew Research Center, 64% of Americans say reducing the effects of climate change as a top priority. 5 years earlier, less than 40% said that. So we have the second positive example how media can influence, covering mostly some kind of issue or the frame in special way the priorities of climate changes, that the media can really positive influence on people and their opinions. And now, very important questions correlated with our topic. How climate change started to be a topic of media research, because we saw that the media cover a lot and we see the number increase every year, but how looks the situation when we talk about the media research? For our meeting, I decided to check website Web of Science database, and the catalog of Web Science database from 1999 to 2021 contains over 1,000 research. of this type. Of course, I base on the searched phrases like climate change or media coverage, because it was the main aim. And what surprised me, but maybe it shouldn't surprise me, but almost 60% of them or research were created during the last 5 years, between 2017 and 2021. And I think it further illustrates the importance and the topicality of a topic of our today's meeting. A total of 74 all of text or research are written by researchers from only 5 countries. And here it's not nice information. And the United States researchers created a group more than 30% of people. Then Great Britain, more than 16%. Germany, a little bit more than 10% of authors. Canada, a little bit less than 8%. And the next, China, with 7.7%. Most of the works are related to the communication science. It was more than 30% of all researchers, and only 4 of them to the science of politics. Of course, because I used special phrases like climate change and the media coverage. And the rest of mainly related to the science of the earth and the environment. It's natural. And the research of media messages, nearly 20% of cases mostly use content analysis as a typical media methodology. Afterwards, framing analysis and the discourse analysis were used. It's important because we know how not only journalists, but how researchers do research, and we can understand also the meaning of results. And as you see on the screen, the research concerned various regions around the world. However, the most frequently mentioned were, again, United States, Great Britain, Germany, but also India and Spain. And the most numerous entities related to climate policy were the COP conferences and IPCCs. Interesting, what you can see on the screen, it's also Twitter as a main source, very often a main source of news on social media for journalists and political actors. And what we know from the best studies, when I talk about the best studies, I mean the most cited with the highest rate of score of citations. And one of the most cited studies was published in 2013 by Anderson, you can see on my screen. And the author states that much of the public debate is moving online. We do the same here today. And moving online, allowing people to express their opinion in a significant way. And the use of incident language and values by audience also contributes to polarization. We can observe, I think, this problem almost every day. The author notes also that the most conservative Americans deny the existence of global warming. Another paper focused on the role of journalists, controversy in media coverage, and the role of knowledge among the both audiences and media representatives. The author notes that some journalists lack adequate knowledge, which can have a significant impact on overfacing or downplaying global climate change. They also fail to convey the scientific context. Experimental research, the backbone of the article, showed that the context and the controversy have a significant impact on perception of global warming issues and the people who display pro-environmental attitudes are less susceptible to controversy appearing in the media. The next work of McCamsa and Shanagan was also a hoax. The authors investigated the theory of cyclical patterns of media coverage of environmental issues. Long-term analysis of New York Times and the Washington Post reports from 1980 to 1995 prove that the issue of global warming appeared cyclically and narrative presenting the effects of these processes overlap with specific stage of so-called the news story life. Usually, the most important issue raised by researchers did not receive the attention of media, which, according, of course, to the authors, could negatively affect the attitudes of the audience to this threat in the long term. The impact of the messages of 3 American television news channels was studied by Feldman and Maybach with their team. The results of the content analysis, so we see the type of research and the methodology. So the results of the content analysis found that the climate change was portrayed on Fox News in a more dismissive tone than on, for example, CNN in this case, and MSNBC. Fox News journalists were far more likely to interview people who doubt climate change and deny concerned political efforts. The authors also survived a representative sample of Americans and confirmed the relationship between viewership and political views. And here is example that we cannot say about unbiased media, because we see relations between viewership and the political views. Fox News viewers here from this example deny the problems and were critical on climate policy. In contrast, watching CNN or MSNBC was associated with greater acceptance of global warming. The top 5 most cited papers are rounded out by the meta-analysis by Schaeffer and Schlechting. The authors review more than 130 different papers, but addressing to the role of media communication, climate change. The results show that the number of works is growing, and the range of countries and types of media studies is expanding. The fact that the research focused on Western countries and print media remains unchanged, unfortunately. But this analysis of scientific sources made by authors, it's close, and analysis made by me for the purpose of this project contains very similar research. So I'm happy that that the results are to compare. So as you see, a lot of information about climate change, global warming in the media coverage, still a huge number and increasing numbers of research close to this topic. So it's the time to show a few words about also my research. I will talk briefly about the research design and the methodology of this project. In the light of importance of climate change and the role media play in publishing the problem and the activities of political actors in the realm of climate policy, I conducted the analysis, as I said, of information from 7 television stations. It was Al Jazeera English from Qatar, BBC World Great Britain, CNN, United States, Deutsche Welle from Germany, Euronews and France 24, formerly from France, and Russian RT, former Russia Today. Why I decided to choose the 7 stations. All of them are broadcasted in English, the first, and the second, they cover global issues. Given that social media is becoming as important distribution news channels for news from traditional media, the analyses include information posted on broadcaster websites, and then what I said, shared on the Facebook. In this way, it was possible to provide content that was really relevant to the international audience. Sharing is one of the most important categories, for example, in political marketing research, and an indicator of media entities. A BuzzSumo platform was used to gather data spanning the years, as you see, 2017, 18, 19, from major political events. Here, example, the Paris Agreement, announcement of withdrawal of the Trump administration from the Paris Agreement, amendment on the Kyoto Protocol, and of course the next COP conferences. And using the tool, I mean BuzzSumo, marketing agencies, journalists, election staff can monitor millions of websites and social media posts. In my case, it was also possible. So for this project, I collected data on the 100 most frequently shared articles each year at each individual station. So every year, every station, and I collected the 100 most shared news. And in total, 2,100 articles were collected. And after that, the data, of course, was filtered in order to find research topic like climate change, SDG goals, global warming, and others. So it was filtered. And in the final corpus, climate change or policy, climate policy news were included to the final process, final stage of analysis. A mixed methods approach was used, including both quantitative and qualitative content analysis, so similar, as I said, earlier. And the analysis of the material was performed through text mining technique. It's automatic text processing. In the study, ProSuite provides research. A toolkit was used to analyze coexisting words or phrases, extract topics, and study their context. The project was designed to attempt to answer a few questions. What content and which TV stations were the most commonly distributed online? What topic appeared most frequently in the published articles? What are the regions on the world mentioned in news, so-called news geography? And did the scientist voice feature? Because we heard earlier that the researcher tried to understand how important for journalists is the voice of scientists and the science in general. And I said, of course, why I choose and I use the shareability concept, because it's like a real information, real data, real interaction, and the feedback from people. As you see on the screen, the shareability, it's important, and it was mentioned in different research projects. For example, Smiklas find that the possibility of sharing information between people actually is a core aspect of internet communication. So if it's the main aspect of communication, why not to analyze it? Then, for example, Wang, in his opinion, shares are usually highly correlated with the level of emotions and the meaning of news for audience. So importance, some kind of emotions. And according to Martins and Dwyer, sharing is a more significant form of cultural production, more important than citizens journalists. So it's quite interesting, and we should think really about it. So now briefly about results. Every year, climate change and the climate policy appeared in the top 100 most shared articles. And I think it's very, very important information that between different topics, different themes, sometimes about the celebrities or every day's political events, people start to share information close to climate change. Of course, now we have to check the numbers, and it was formally only about 4.5% of total data collection. And in spite of the fact that it may seem not much, but the topic compete with text about the other topics, what I said. But we have to know that during the analysis period, this almost 100 news was shared more than 60 million times. And I think that it illustrates the importance of the articles for the global audience. We don't see on the screen, you have to trust me, but the indicator increased each year. I mean the indicator of sharing. Every year, the number of shares were higher and higher. But the most frequently shared materials came, in this case, from CNN and BBC. It was 2 stations and all shares about 83% of all news. Oh, I see that my slides are not moving. It's not good information, but I'm not sure what you see. I hope that the results should be on the screen now. I hope. If not, I will try to maybe share the presentation later if it's possible. And as I said, the most frequently shared materials came from CNN and BBC. And due to both station popularity and the stable position in the international cultural sphere, the website recorded the highest visit rates in the study period. And of course, I use here the data from the platform SimilarWeb. So we have data that these 2 websites were the most popular, and the people really share news from here. The thematic cluster were identified using text mining techniques, and the global warming, it was about 56 of articles, and decided related to climate policy were associated most frequently with the issue of climate change. I hope that you will see now, because now it's an important element. In the group, we can see after the results of the text mining processes, that we have the 2 groups of articles, the topics. In the group, so-called ecological topics, we discuss issues concerning climate change, including the causes, effects, and implication of melting glaciers. Discussion was also held about excessive food waste, the need to reduce plastic use, or planting trees with millions of dollars. But the second thematic blocks focus on climate policy. And more than 42% of articles referred to Donald Trump and his administration, but probably it was connected with his decisions, sometimes in opinion of many people, dramatic or ununderstanding. The main topic of discussion was the announcement, was I said, withdrawal from the Paris Agreement and his political, economical, but also social consequences. Furthermore, the articles highlighted Trump's exposure to experts who question climate change and the human impact on global warming. So we see here that the negative frame of Donald Trump, and the people who read newspapers, news from CNN website, share information in negative context when we talk about the Donald Trump. And another important political actor exposed to the publisher's text was Emmanuel Macron, who was involved in the Paris Agreement. Among those that appeared most frequently were also European Parliament. The issue of election, it was the time, elections to the European Parliament, the activities of individual parties, and the programs, for example, of green parties. And the next element here in this block of issue, it was the United Nations decisions, guidelines for political actors. The media focus mostly on Western countries. Just in the case of scientists research, we see here the comparison. But the accents were distributed completely different. For example, Al Jazeera's Facebook audience shared a majority of its articles on Australia and the situation in Australia and France. But BBC materials include news about mostly Great Britain. It was about 53%, and Australia. CNN's content mainly mentions the USA. It was about 87%, but we know it was the specific situation and the specific political aspects. And the people reading CNN content share news also about other countries, but the USA was the main core. Deutsche Welle or Euronews mentioned Germany mostly, while the France 24 mentioned France. It's interesting, I think, because we can see here the global medium with the global audience, but in this case, we see the strong and important role of this kind of TV station in the public diplomacies. They talk about international issue, but sometimes they mostly cover the perspective of their country. And it's interesting because real people in real time share this kind of news. But we have here interesting results when we talk about RT. RT shares reported 68% of news related to Great Britain and United States. But they were both negative in sharing case. For example, an article has been published about the former Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn. According to Corbyn, because he won the MacBride Peace Prize, and the British media, according to Corbyn, wouldn't want to mention it since the United Kingdom, it's his opinion, illegally supplied weapons to countries as Saudi Arabia, which is a major player in Yemeni conflict. Meanwhile, Corbyn criticized the US military strategy when he accepted the awards of United Union headquarters. He discussed social inequalities and climate change. So during the ceremony, he criticized United States, Great Britain, and talked about the climate change. And we see and we understand why RT covered the issue and why people share this kind of news. And this kind of news is an example about one news. And this one news was shared almost 50,000 times. And the last element of my research was the image of scientists and their role in the media content. Here we see that the role was very, very different. The voice of researchers or reference to their work appeared in nearly half of all articles. It was about 47 cases. But we see differences. For example, in BBC materials, climate experts appeared in 63% of shared news. And now we will see a decrease because in Euronews it was 50%, in Al Jazeera 40%, CNN almost 40%, France 24%, around 30%, Deutsche Welle almost 30%, and RT only 25%. So we see the correlation. And the presence of scientists can be categorized into three groups, the thematic clusters. The first category includes references to research findings and the expert warnings. The second group of information is the voice of science, which includes climate policy recommendation. So the first group, warnings, then recommendation, but we have also the third group. And in the third group, doubters, mainly political actors, express their opinions. And here in this group, we will see the situation that the mainly political actors attack scientists. And here we have one sentence, like example, Trump, whose administration implemented a fossil fuel program, accused scientists of setting a political agenda and quotation whether the humans are responsible for global warming. So we are not agree with global warming. We don't believe that the human have influence and so on. So three groups of this position and visible of researchers. Scientists' voice, as I said, was heard in articles read by a global audience. Journalists usually reference the results of up-to-date expert opinions and the guidelines that they have been presented to political actors involved in climate policy initiatives. In the social media space, materials critical of the Trump administration and his views receive the most shared. And materials challenging the scientific consensus was mainly posted on the RT website and the station Facebook profile. Compared to the Western broadcasters, the range of impact was much smaller, and average distribution was of several thousand shares. So the power of RT shares were really, really smaller, but we have really smaller group of people who visit the website, smaller group of people who share news. So this in this sense, it's understandable. So just few words of conclusions. As a result of ambitious plans and cost, countries implementing climate policy solution encounter challenges. While providing a lot of valuable information, the global media follows scientific research and refers the expert opinions. The audience share this content, among others on Facebook, allowing for further distribution and reaching people who do not watch TV. Disinformation also exists on social media and sometimes in content shared from classical media, traditional media, but in which not only doubts are expressed, but also attitudes that undermine the most important results of climatology. During the research period, these viewpoints were, however, in the minority. So I think the next positive information. And significant part of the analysis material was, as I said, derived from the COP reports and the IPCC findings. Media coverage concentrate on activities of large countries, and Donald Trump's action and his diplomatic conflict with Emmanuel Macron were widely discussed. Retroactively, we know about the US return to Paris climate agreements, as well as the strengthening of climate joint action efforts. Next, research should focus on the distribution of articles covering the presidency of Joe Biden, as well as the disappointment caused by the final COP26 decision in Glasgow last year. And I'm going to collect this data, but it needs time. So today I had the opportunity to show you briefly, of course, results of the analysis from 3 years. Thank you very much.
So and if you have some questions, so that ask directly to Professor Lodzki. Over to Sam.
I have some problems. I don't hear you.
Hello, Sam.
Some problems with microphone.
Yes. Sir, the weather is very bad here. Okay, sir, there is a question asked by Mr. Shubham Das. Let you answer the question when Sam is getting ready to ask. Sir, the question is, do you think neoliberal capitalism is a potent threat to environmental catastrophe or climate change today than ever before? How do you look at the climatic justice risk due to posted by the development West who are exporting their polluting and extractive industries to global South without bothering about their third world environment? Global North is always talking about common but differential responsibility of third world. How do you look at the double standard or morality nature of developed countries?
It's very, very difficult question. And of course, you have right that maybe not double standards, but really we have a problem that the main countries or the biggest countries try to focus on their point of view. And without discussion about the global context, it's impossible to understand the real problems. And we see the same problem with researchers, that they mostly focus on the biggest countries. So the voice of other countries where the problem really exists should be more visible. And I think, and I see in the chat that you asked, for example, about the Brazil and the other countries. So we should talk about it. We should check whether, for example, the media try to cover the issue of other countries. And okay, a global perspective, but from the regional point of view, it's the most important. And I think that the media doesn't cover everything because they have maybe not double standards, but they have just journalist standards that we have to talk about the big countries with potential in the international scale. And our audience will read it or will watch it. It's a huge problem, but for our luck, we have actually the possibility, when we talk about the technical aspects, we have the possibility to broadcast not only as a media. Every of us can cover some issue, and United Nations start to have the possibilities to share important issue. I mean that every of us or the small non-institutional non-profits or institutional can cover different issue. So international discussion is important. And as I said to you, and I show you during the presentation, very important initiative is and freely available, and I think it's important. Let me check on during my presentation. The Media and the Climate Change Observatory. You can get access for free, and they did a lot of analysis month by month, and they collect information from different countries. So probably we can discover how, for example, problems of different countries are covered, and who and how analyze this kind of news. But unfortunately, in global voice, in global perspective, the problem of countries where the problem exists and are real, it's not covered in enough rates.
Thank you so much, sir. Now requesting Sam, if connection is okay, then please okay.
Yeah.
Sam?
I hope it's okay now. Yeah. So thank you for such a good talk, sir. And continuing the queries of Rajana Ranji, let me continue with some perspectives from Global South. I mean, we heard you talking about the Trump administration withdrawing from Paris Summit, and then some data from Canada and the BBC and CNN. A recent paper, I think in environmental communication, shows that over the past 20 years, the coverage on climate change in Indian newspapers, this study was taking this account in the print media, not in electronic media, has substantially increased, but the change account for only 0.33%, which is like very dismal. And the other issue is that we only see peaks in the coverage when there are some COP conferences happening. So in the Global South, somehow the whole discussion on climate change tends to get limited to what we can broadly call climate politics. We hardly hear things about, climate change impacts, climate science, or climate change in society even. So there are two issues at hand. The first is that how do you view this, whole intervention of corporate handlings of media? I mean, very recently, I think last month, something like Boston Global Post has come up with a dedicated portal which will be just dealing with climate change. So even in the West or in the global North, the things are, driving progressively going forward, but at a very substantially slow pace. So many times the human-induced climate change with its environmental impacts have some kind of, corporate designs behind them. Maybe it may be some kind of a deforestation. Maybe it could be, mining of ores. Maybe it could be a handling of indigenous population and their displacement and migration. So sometimes these news coverages could not be really clubbed under the climate action or climate policies. And secondly, how do you think the people, the journalists who actually handle these news are, trained and equipped enough to make a connection between, the reasonings of human-induced climate changes and the impacts we see them, we witness for them? So, for talking from an Indian perspective, something like the droughts in agricultural seasons in India would be a great deal of talk in the town, but hardly we see there would be a connection between the happening droughts and the links with the human-induced climate change. So,
Oh, a lot of aspects in your question. I'm not sure if I understand everything well, but going to your second question, first of all, it's a huge problem when we talk about journalists. I think that you ask about the knowledge also of journalists, and we see here, I think, good changes, because earlier, 10, 15 years ago, the topic was covered by the people who I think didn't understand correctly the topic they covered. So sometimes we found a lot of different mistakes in the content of media coverage, but it started to be changed. I mean, we have in different media entities special teams, environmental teams. And so it means that we have the people who specialize in this area. And the content and the quality has improved last years. But of course, unfortunately, I don't have at this moment information about about the media from South, so it's difficult for me to compare it. But for example, BBC created a special standards how to talk about, for example, different aspects of climate change, because there are a lot of different elements here. They have the special standards. They use a special guidelines how to talk, how to explain people what to talk about. Difficult for the people information. So we see the progress in Western media, that the content is better, and that the people who cover this issue started to be specialized. They have the special course. Sometimes part of the team go to different conferences to have direct contact with people who are responsible, for example, with researchers. So special standards, special guidelines who help journalists to explain people the global issue. But I didn't have information here at this moment about the South, so it will be difficult for me to answer at this moment.
Thank you so much for your answer, sir. Sir, there is another question is asked by Shubham Das. The question is, sir, how do you look at the policy paradigms of the third world countries like India, who were forced to frame their policies as per the agenda set by multinational agencies like World Bank and World Trade Organization, who are also facilitating the developed countries to outsource their most extractive industries to the third world countries, where the environment has been remained a low priority so far as the legitimation and policy perspective are concerned. Third world countries are inviting MNCs at the cost of their environment in order to pay of their debt. What is your view on this, sir?
Okay.
So do you get my question? Hello? Please.
Rudra, actually, sir is not audible.
Yes, Professor Lodzki, you are not audible. Hello. What do you listen?
Rudra, sir is connecting shortly. Sir is coming. Rudra, ask your question.
I tried to join again, but I saw problems with internet connection. So I'm not sure if do you hear me or not?
Sir, do you hear me, sir? Hello. Professor Lodzki, do you hear me? Hello. Hello.
Rudra, please go for official vote of thanks. Due to technical problem, maybe he perhaps could not be joined. Possible.
Okay, Dr. Jena. Thank you so much, Professor Lodzki, to join us far from Poland. I'd like to thank everyone to help me to putting this conference together. First of all, my big thanks to our speaker, Professor Lodzki, for their wonderful session and very much interesting contributions to the academic world and providing his time toward Human Sciences and Management Conference 2021 and 22. I have to acknowledge the institutional contribution here in particular, the Indian Institute of Management Sambalpur and Central University of Odisha and Ravenshaw University. My special thanks to our patrons, Professor Sanjay Naik, Professor Sarath Kumar Palita, and Professor Mahadev Choiswal, and the convener, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda and Charudat Panigrahiji. Special mention to Dr. Vikram Kesari Jena, Director, Sdg ADIVASI Research and Development, and Dr. Nupur Patnaik, Dr. Shubham Das, Sam Kashyap for helping me carry forward this session. I would like to thank all our members, Professor Srinivas Luenes, Professor Sudarshan Mishra, Dr. B.C. Das, Professor Loknath Mishra, Professor Sarath Kumar Raut, Shubham Das, Nupur Patnaik, Priti Sri Ranjan, Dr. Samuel Lima, Dr. Kamal Prasad Mohanty, Dr. Neha Sharma, Dr. Saban Bag, Dr. Nina Das, and Dr. Chinmay Kumar Sahu. Thank you so much, all participants, to join World Human Sciences and Management Conference for this session. Thank you.